Here's a question from Karen. What specific steps can we take now to combat voter suppression?
Lawyer.
We'll ask our lawyer.
Yeah, I know, it's like the politicians and the lawyers. So I think, when there are registration drives, it's part of the unsexy part, right? Door to door, standing out at the strip mall or the grocery store, making sure people are registered to vote. Everybody up here, I'm sure, has done a lot of that, where you're just standing out there all day harassing poor people trying to buy their groceries about whether or not they're registered to vote, and going door to door and doing those kind of things. And I think, as Sam said earlier, if you see bills coming up in your state house, voter ID laws, right, things like that, you should be writing, you should be calling, you should be active in the ACLU and, volunteering to read and write amicus briefs or whatever the thing is. But it really is just about engaging, and usually it's not in a sexy way.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's interesting is the majority of voters in Monterey County vote by mail. The state of Oregon has everybody voting by mail. They have no voting places on Election Day. They don't have voter fraud. And we don't have voter fraud in California. We have to make sure that it's very easy to vote. And maybe if we're going to, if it's states like California and Oregon that aren't having a very good turnout, maybe we ought to do what Australia does and give you a fine if you don't vote. But in the election, and my friends in Australia say you get a parking ticket, a citation in the mail. It's about a $12 or $20 fine. And you can go, when you have a ballot, you can actually have a protest vote because every ballot has none of the above on it.
When Zach and I, when we were in Pennsylvania in '08, you remember there was the campaign that they were dropping leaflets in the public housing projects with the wrong election day on them, right? And we did a lot of work to counter that message. Had something to do with Beyonce and other people coming to visit, but.
Unfortunately, very common.
And I'll say, actually, I feel like people give up too easily in the process. They get really engaged about an issue. Maybe the vote still goes the other way, and then they just give up. Or they vote just once. They get really active for Senator Sanders, for example. He doesn't win the primary, and so therefore the system was rigged, and I'm not going to be involved in the system anymore. I don't understand that. You need to change the system from the inside. You got to keep going. You don't just give up. This system gives you a chance to continually participate. And I feel like there's been this sense of giving up when people don't get totally what they want. And I think that you actually move the needle sometimes more than you realize, even when you lose. There are times when bills change, definitely legislation at my level does, during that art of compromise that you may not have gotten the ultimate vote you wanted, but it was some of the elements were mitigated. Your concerns were actually added in. And that's where I want to make sure people stay engaged if they don't feel like they totally won.
And I think, people often lose sight of what representative democracy is, that these people we elect are not supposed to do 100% of what I want or what you want. They're supposed to represent their districts. And they also the way they represent is influenced by pressures. For example, Bernie Sanders didn't win, but I don't think anybody on the Hillary campaign would argue that Bernie Sanders didn't have an influence on Hillary's positions.
The problem with voting in America is it's left up to the states. There's some national, you have to, the national policies, be 18 and be an American citizen and register to vote. But how you register to vote is up to the states, and how you present yourself on Election Day at the voting booth is up to the states. And states that make it really difficult also tend to have overwhelming now majorities of Republicans in the state houses, and they have a tremendous responsibility in the upcoming years, because in 2020, when we have a national census on every decade, we count every living being in the United States, and we spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that we count every living being. And that becomes then the population that we base our districts on at the local level, state level, and state legislatures draw the districts for congressional members. It's probably the only time that Congress members really pay a lot of attention to who's in their state house, because their future is in the hands of those people drawing the districts. These upcoming elections in 2018, particularly in 2018, because that's going to set the foundation for the 2020 election. If these state houses don't start getting either flip, ideally, or at least get close to where you can begin to compromise because you have enough political power, you're going to continue to see this gerrymandering that allows extremists to get elected.
And just one other comment sort of on engagement. I think Zach made this point earlier. It's not enough to go out for your presidential election, for midterms, vote for your senator. Right? You got to go vote for your district attorney, your county supervisor, because those elections are incredibly important. And more often than not, those people then become, right, the candidates running for higher office. And, one thing that I know I struggle with a lot, I used to live in Brooklyn, which Kings County is the most solidly Democratic county in the country. Now I live in Representative Pelosi's district, and I'm kind of like, well, like I could call, but I feel pretty comfortable that they're representing my views, right, on this. Well, but with technology now, like I can easily phone bank for, the election we just had in Kansas, right, the elections in Georgia. Like I can phone bank from the comfort of my home in those swing districts and call those representatives or call those voters. I mean, it's really easy now to be engaged outside of our own areas. This next tranche of people, their income actually does exceed their expenses, but if you think about it, right, all your expenses basically, like your big expenses get incurred one day at the beginning of the month, right? You pay your rent, you pay your car note, you pay like whatever, but you only get half of your income. So even if your total income exceeds your total expenses, you're starting the month off short.